Constant and consistent advertising is the key to marketing your business. So what do I mean when I say constant and consistent? Let's back up a little bit. I remember when early days when I had my clothing store, I would advertise like in the newspaper because we had a sale going on, and I'd run an ad, or my business was slow and I needed to put an ad in the paper, and I've tried all size ads, small ads, big ads, and I'd run these ads and I never got anything out of it. And then I would do some things like mailers, or every now and then I'd do maybe something on the local radio station, and I'd do just a little bit because I didn't have much money. Usually when you advertise, you're poor, so you don't have much money. And I never got anything out of it. And then one day I met this marketing guy, and he said, the key behind your marketing is that you have to constantly do it, and what your message is has to be consistent. And he said you're better off to run a whole bunch of little bitty small things than a bunch of big things when you need it. And the problem is that when you need to do a sale, I had a clothing store at the time, when you need to do a sale, everybody else is having a sale too. So it gets flooded, right? So he told me about this one guy in town that had a ladies' shoe store. And this guy, what he did was he bought an ad. I mean, it was about that big. It was the smallest thing you've ever seen. And it was a shoe, like a picture of an old-fashioned lady shoe. And then at the bottom it said Shoe Gallery, Roswell Square. That was all the ad said. And it was in the same spot every week in the newspaper. So every week when you got your newspaper and you open it up, there was that Shoe Gallery ad. He spent less money in a whole year than I would spend in a couple of weeks trying to draw people in. And I went and met this guy and I said, tell me about it. He said, man, it's the best thing I've ever done. It's just there, it's constant, it's consistent. People see it every week and they think about me, and that's what you gotta do, Steve. You gotta be more constant and more consistent. And so I started thinking about how I could do that. So I started running a little small ad in the newspaper. And then somebody came along and said, hey man, you need to start doing an email newsletter. And I said, but I get newsletters and it's from my accountant, or it's from a real estate agent. It's like how to fix my house up for spring, or from the accountant, how to do your taxes, this is a write-off you need to look at. And I said, I don't ever read that. He said, that's right. He said, because that's an industry newsletter. What you want to do is make it more like a People magazine. He said, you don't want to do a Fortune magazine. You want to do more like a People. So come up with something. So I thought, well, I'm pretty social. I love my town. Why don't I talk about things that are going on in my town? And I started creating a newsletter around fun stuff going on in the town. And that became very, very popular. And to this day, I still do it 20-something years later. And I believe that generates me 3 to 5 deals a month just from being consistent and constant with my newsletter. So do you have something like that? Are you putting together something in your marketing that's constant and consistent? I can give you all kind of examples. I know an insurance guy, he says he has what he calls his milk route. On Mondays, he goes and sees these certain people. On Tuesdays, he goes and sees these certain people. If you're on his milk route, he's gonna show up every week about the same time and say hi, and he's gonna talk to you for a minute, maybe hand you a koozie or a pen or a sticky pad, but it's all the time. He does it all the time. He doesn't let it change. So he's constant and consistent with it. And then I remember when we got in the mortgage business and we would have a refinance, I remember I thought, well, why don't I write a they call them long letters, where like, hey, this is something I think you ought to think about. You ought to refinance if you do, and I'd love to help you with it. It's sort of a long letter instead of a short letter. I started writing long letters when the refinancing started happening back in the 90s, and I got a habit of doing that every time the rates dropped. And then all of a sudden, everybody in my office started wanting to do that too. And I'd learned to do that in the mortgage business. I'd learned to write long letters about new stuff coming in this spring and this fall, but I did it every season. I did it all the time. And so that became a really good way for me to generate business, was these long letters, but they were constant. Every time the rates dropped, I sent out long letters, and I did them all the time when the rates dropped. I should have come up with some way to do it for people on purchase business, but I couldn't. I don't know why, I just couldn't make it happen. But I want you to think about some piece of advertising that you're doing, and think about it like somebody that's on the radio. You know how you see a radio spot that runs all the time, or you see a TV spot and it runs all the time. It's because they know that if they constantly do that, they're on your mind all the time. So when you get ready to make a purchase or do something, they'll be top of mind. So that's the whole idea behind constant and consistent. Don't do something because you need the business right now. Don't do something because you think that it might work. Like if you're a real estate agent and you're farming a neighborhood, farm that neighborhood, own that neighborhood. Don't just farm it once a year or twice a year. Farm it all the time. Farm it every week, farm it every month. You've got to do it all the time. You know, if you're an insurance guy and you have got this book of business, are you meeting your customers at least twice a year to have a cup of coffee with them, to have some lunch with them, to make sure that anything that's happened in their life, they're insured on that, or that you know enough about their business that when you run into another customer, you can refer them business. But like I know in a closing attorney, the lady that runs his front desk, her job is to have a coffee and a lunch for him every day. That's his whole marketing plan. Is every morning he's meeting somebody on the way to work for a cup of coffee, and every day at lunch he's going to lunch with a mortgage person or a real estate agent. If you're selling big stuff, you know, you're selling big software, or you're selling to big people around the country, are you doing something every month for those customers? Are you sending them, you know, if they're into tennis, are you sending them a tennis ball, a case of tennis balls every month? Or if they're into pickleball, are you sending them a t-shirt that says I love pickleball? Are you staying with some theme all the time for those people? And I'm afraid that a lot of people don't do that. They only market when they need to. But if you can make something you can put a marketing thing together that you do all the time, then it becomes a habit. And then once you've done that and you create that habit and you're doing it all the time, you can create a second habit, and then a third habit, and a fourth habit. So for me, my newsletter was my first habit. My second habit was I'm going to make a list of everybody I know, and I'm going to call those people all the time. I'm going to call everybody I know at least once a year. If you're an A customer of mine and sending me a lot of business, I'm going to call you every week. So I try to do that. That's constant and consistent. No matter what, I do that every week. I do that every month. Come up with ideas on how you want to market your business and do it all the time. Make it constant and make it consistent, and don't not do it. Hey, if you love these videos and you love these marketing ideas that I'm coming up with, know that we got a whole bunch of them on my YouTube channel. Tell everybody, tell your friends about it, especially if they own a business or they're in sales. There's some great ideas for them. We got a book that's called A Few Big Ideas. The book will be available. You can buy the book, give it to somebody for a Christmas present, or give it to somebody you know that's really struggling in business. My purpose is to help people grow their business, and I want to help you and your friends grow their business.